Good evening and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia here on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Luv Bay, we want you to know and remember that we're rising out of the ashes together. Our topic on this evening is trauma-informed care. And we have with us our co-host, Erin Mitchell. And our guest for the evening is Georgine Green. And Georgine has a lot of letters behind her name. I'm going to throw these letters out there, and then she is going to define for us what they mean. She is in the medical field. So Georgine Green, MSN, CRNP, FNP-C, RN-BC. So I thank you so much, Georgine, for being here with us. Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or our co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. You can also text any questions or comments to 437-778-3299. And also, if you have any resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, any local organizations or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And with that, Erin, if you would greet our listeners and viewers on today.
Yes. Hi, everybody from Luv Bay Radio all across the globe and all the different time zones. It's always such a pleasure to be in this circle of powerful leaders and people that are working in the community to help us rise out of the ashes and rise up from our experiences that have been traumatic, painful, hurtful, and really bring solutions to the table. And so this conversation is always important to me, and I'm honored to be here. Again, my name is Erin Mitchell. I'm a part of Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc., a nonprofit organization that provides immediate funding to people that are trying to transition out of violent situations in immediacy. So again, we'll talk more about that, but I myself have just over the I've known about trauma-informed care and have studied it through my background as an acupuncturist and an herbalist in order to be able to be in the treatment room with folks who have a variety of experiences in their lives. However, I will say that just in the last 5 years, my own recognition of traumatic experiences in my life and how they've come up for me has been the biggest education, right? Because I have walked through that and I see how it's impacted my choices, my reactions, my life. And now I am a better person in the world because it's not to say that you have to go through trauma to be empathetic to it, but it does really empower us, and for anybody out there that has experienced trauma, just know that you are going to, when you are working through yours, you're going to be that safe space for somebody someday. And that can be very inspirational. So I'm just really excited to have this conversation because I think it is the key piece to us transforming ourselves and our societies. So if we can be there and care for each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erin. So, Georgine, if you would take a moment to introduce yourself and explain those letters to our Luv Bay family.
Sure. Hi. Good morning, good evening, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So, by way of introduction, my name is Georgianne. I go by Gigi, and I'm a registered nurse. I work with a large academic center in Philadelphia. So the MSN, I have a master's degree in nursing, and I'm also a certified family nurse practitioner. RN is because I'm still currently working as a registered nurse and board certified, so in medical surgery. So that's my area of expertise. But on the job, I go to every unit except the intensive care setting, and so I work with patients from the ED in all aspects of of care, which is like cardiology, neurology. So I work with patients with, different, diseases and different adult populations. So
Wow,
that's
thank
what
you so much. That is beautiful, and I foresee you coming back to be with us to share more information. I know for sure, Erin, Gigi's going to come back with us, and she's going to talk about nutrition. I know that's going to be a topic that we cover. I think that is absolutely very important when you're moving through your life and you're trying to get things back in balance. Nutrition does play a huge role, especially when you are dealing with trauma related to domestic violence and sexual assault. I think the way that we eat, the way that we treat our bodies is it can be a huge help or a detriment, to how we're navigating and moving through life. So, but that's a whole nother topic, but Gigi is going to come back and talk with us about that and some other issues as well. But before we begin, we want to start with sharing some resources. And as Erin mentioned, we are we have created Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. to be a help and a support to victims and survivors of domestic violence. And as Erin mentioned, one of the biggest things that we do is our rapid funding. It's our emergency funding. We help individuals with relocation, with doctor visits. We provide finances for transportation, personal toiletries, help with utilities, rent, mortgage. However we can be of assistance, that's our goal. That's our aim. So if you would like to help us, you can visit our GoFundMe page. You just go to GoFundMe and look for Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. You can donate that way, or you can write a check to Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. Our P.O. Box is P.O. Box 15. We are in Drexel Hill, PA, and the zip is 19026. I also want to share, as a resource, Pastor Darius Daniels. He's the pastor of Change Church. There are several locations that he has in the United States. His website is dariusdaniels.com, and his YouTube channel is Darius Daniels TV. And I always describe his services as if you have already come to a point in your healing process and you want to move further, then this would be a resource, I believe, that could help you as you're moving further. In Australia, we want to share the National Family Violence Counseling Service. Their website is www.1800respect.org.au. Their phone number is 1-800-737-732. And in England, we have IDAS, which is a specialist charity in Yorkshire supporting people affected by domestic abuse and sexual violence. Their website is idas.org.uk. Their phone number is 03-000-110-110. And then we have the Asia Foundation. Their website is asiafoundation.org. And our last resource of the day, we have Polaris Project, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Their phone number is 1-888-373-7888. Or you can text the words "Be Free," BEFREE. You can text the words "Be Free" to the number 233-733. And their website is polarisproject.org. And with that, we move into our topic on this evening, which is trauma-informed care. And so, Gigi, my first question to you is, can you first explain to Luv Bay what trauma-informed care actually is and why it's vital to those who have actually experienced trauma?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, trauma-informed care, it's usually a term used for, clinicians, and it's something that we try to bear in mind when we're caring for our patients. And just a couple bullet points of really what it is. It's being aware that many of our patients do have a history of trauma. It's recognizing, trauma symptoms. It's, responding to agitated patients in a non-judgmental, supportive way. It's ensuring that physical and emotional safety is maintained with not only our patients, but also our staff. Being trustworthy and transparent with our patients, family members, and staff. Promoting recovery and healing for those who have experienced trauma. Making decisions in partnership with patients and avoiding that power imbalance in the interactions. Empowering our patients and giving them choice and control over the care they receive. And it's also promoting self-care among staff and clinicians. So it's, simply put, it's really recognizing that trauma happens, to everyone. It's universal. And being able to bear that in mind when we're, interacting with each other and our patients. So that's initially what it is.
So awesome. Thank you so much. And so, Erin and I full well understand what trauma-informed care is, how it should be executed, how it should be demonstrated. Can you give us an idea of what proper or correct trauma-informed care actually looks like in a setting of a doctor's office or a hospital visit? You talked about choice, and you mentioned so many things, but I can just remember, just in my own experience, going to a doctor's visit, you walk into a room and they throw papers at you, and it's like, are any of these things on this list bothering you? And before you can get an answer out, they're out the door. So can you actually describe what it should look like?
Yeah. So I do have a resource here. It's an article, and it's written by Bridget Cohen. And this provider, she is a New York-based family physician. And she provided, this information, and I think this is extremely important. And her trauma-informed approach is, about restoring patients' trust and giving, again, a sense of control over a visit. And so it includes, asking permission before touching a patient.
Yes.
So let you know, okay, I'm about to take a listen to your heart. I need to assess your thyroid, for example. And this one I remember, very specific, because when you're assessing patients, there's certain areas of the body that can recreate trauma. So, for example, when you're feeling, when I say assess, mean just feel the thyroid. The thyroid is sitting right at the throat. And so initially we would assess from stand behind the patient and assess that way. So it would look like your hand is reaching around their neck to do that. Palpate, right? And so a trauma-informed care or a trauma-informed approach would be to let the person know beforehand, this is what I'm going to do. I need to, feel your thyroid to make sure it's not too large. How I need to do that is I have to feel where it is. So explain everything beforehand. If this is something that is uncomfortable for you, we can try another way to do that. But, just to let persons know what you're doing. Because by me reaching around your throat, that can, trigger a past event that you may have. Absolutely. Especially if you're a victim of or past victim of domestic violence.
Yes.
Or if you had that before where someone, tried to choke you or whatever the case is. So these things are very important to bear in mind, before even approaching the patient, is to always remember that you don't know what persons are going through.
Yeah. So even with that example, and I think that was a great example, does it stop with if this makes you uncomfortable, we'll do this a different way? Or do you gently probe, like, and ask questions and then provide resources? Because being startled, being triggered with someone putting their hands around your throat, that's not a small thing. So is it just, all right, I see that this is bothering you, we're going to do something different? Or do you actually take that moment and dig deeper and then provide resources and help after that?
Yes, and you're exactly right. And that's a really important point that you brought up, because I don't think that's something that is very well taught. It's not something that, is thought about in, in the doctor's office, in whatever situations, clinicians. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's extremely important, to not just raise awareness, but to bring these issues to light. Because this is something that definitely needs to change. I do understand what you're talking about. You said before, where the paper is thrown at you, have this happened to you before. I know that because I've experienced exactly what you're talking about. And so I don't know if much care is given to recognize that there is more to be done. And so again, like, I really appreciate you, bringing up that, that point. So this is definitely something that we need to move past, not just, let's do this another way, but also to go deeper. And I think that's where, training comes in.
Yeah. So I want to follow up what you said. I want to say this, and then Aaron, I'll go to you for a question or comment. Not too long ago, I was asked to go to a nursing school. It was a nursing program in Exeter, not far from me, and I was asked to speak to the nurses. There was a domestic violence agency there, so there were counselors also, and the whole point was to bring awareness, to be informative, to educate these nurses through our experiences and what we know and what we've learned. And I was just surprised that there were nurses in different levels. Some were about to graduate, some were just starting, and to stand in front of these nurses or soon to be nurses, these students, and telling them, this is what you are going to encounter. Like, a nurse is on the front line. With whatever type of nurse you are, you will see things before the doctor actually sees it, because you'll be the first contact with a patient. And I was stunned that so many of the nursing students, they were surprised, because this had never been, from the students who were just starting and the students who were about to graduate. This wasn't something that was introduced to them. So they were thinking, I'm going to become a nurse. Nobody had ever said anything about domestic violence. No one had ever said, these are the things that you need to look out for. So it's not just a person coming to you and you're asking them questions and giving them a physical and you're just talking about their health. No, there may be some underlying issues that are going to give you a bigger picture, and you and your expertise have to learn how to support them, how to dig that out. So I've just found it surprising. Not only nurses, there are doctors who have not, in all their medical training, received any kind of training that deals with domestic violence and trauma. So I just find it interesting.
Too.
Yeah,
I'm going to add to that too. So I actually went to, I started out as an associate degree nurse, went on and to become a bachelor's degree nurse and, a master's prepared nurse. And it's in my master's program that I've actually, had this topic come about, and it was probably like for an hour. And so, just to say, I'm not sure what other curriculums look like, but you're exactly right. It's not, taught enough. And so even just like introducing the topic, that's one thing, but also to know how to be able to care for these patients. It's extremely important as well. And so just knowing come in and how to, be aware, and how to recognize that, hey, something isn't right. A typical patient would not flinch when,
Yes.
when I'm assessing them, or if my voice, got a little bit loud and they're, or they're not making eye contact or anything of this. Like, those are very small cues that can easily be missed. I know one of the bigger things that, we are aware of is if someone, comes with a partner, the partner doesn't want to leave the room, and that's kind of just where it ends. Like, whenever we have, patients who come in, try to get them away from the partner so that we can ask, certain questions. But that's pretty much like the biggest intervention that we're taught. So what else can we do? So I completely agree with what you're saying. And I'm going to use this opportunity as well just to explain a little bit more about, life circumstances. And it's recent that I actually found out that there are different life events that can also cause stress and, difficulty in our personal lives. And it's not just something that happens to us personally, but if I witnessed it happen to someone else, if I learned about it from a close family member or friend, if you are exposed to it as a part of your job, or or however else. But there's so many different things, and right here I have like 17 different events that can actually cause trauma, and it's like natural disasters.
Mm-hmm.
If you've experienced a flood, if you've witnessed it, or a hurricane or a tornado, or even just learning about it, even a fire or explosion, even like transportation accidents, a serious accident at work or at home, exposure to toxic substances like radiation or dangerous chemicals. What I thought about as well is some persons who may have experienced, acid attacks.
Yes.
Physical assault, like being attacked, hit, slapped, kicked, or beaten up. Assault with a weapon, being stabbed, being shot, being threatened with a knife or a gun or bomb threats. Physical assault, or sexual assault, my apologies. Unwanted or uncomfortable sexual experience. So sometimes it's not just the assault itself, but being in a situation where you were made very uncomfortable or something that was unwanted. We have our veterans who've been exposed to combat and exposure to a war zone, and not just the military, but also civilians. Being captive, like kidnapped, abducted, held hostage, or prisoner of war, a life-threatening illness or injury, and the list goes. It goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Even sudden violent death, like a suicide or homicide. And I'm sorry. I'll just share this with you. I lost my dad to violence. He was shot while he was at work, and the first thing that person would ask, well, what was he involved in? Nothing. It was just a victim to that, and it crippled me for a while because fear sets in, and then for years I didn't want to travel. I looked outside every time before I go out. If I see a car that's slowly approaching, they're going about their business, but in my mind I'm like, what if this person who did that is coming to get me? And so trauma can affect in so many different ways. And again, it doesn't have to happen to you personally. But if you've witnessed it or learned about it from your family, like that's, that can be traumatic as well. And the most important thing is understanding, and this is universal precautions, just understanding that any event or series of events, whether it's experienced or witnessed, it can profoundly affect our social or physical, psychological, physiological well-being, and definitely cause trauma. And so it's extremely important in this sense to understand that people are, we're all walking around with different, things that are going on in our lives or exposure to different types of trauma. And so, being respectful to each other, that's paramount. Understanding that, persons are going through things, that's so extremely important for us to bear in mind. And recognizing, how resilient persons are, dealing with this trauma, but still going about their everyday life and, trying to make, the best of, whatever situation and continue to hold their head up and continue to thrive. It's really important for us to recognize that too. And, being very non-judgmental and supportive, in every area of, our journeys. So I just to share that with you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. Erin?
Yeah. Wow, Gigi, thank you for sharing your story, or a piece of it, and also listing off all those different ways that trauma impacts our lives and the lives of people we care about, the lives of our neighbors. I wanted to just really highlight your description around in hospital care, giving that explanation, or any kind of care, health care, that, patients are given the explanation of what is happening first, and then asking permission, and then giving them the choice. So that's all just, I believe, a really powerful protocol for any type of care. I think there's some assumptions around care when we're going to get it, that like the permission comes by us just being there, but that's not necessarily the case, as we all know. Like sometimes we need hospital attention or therapeutic attention, and it's not the patient who is going to necessarily be aware of their nervous system's reaction to getting care. And so I just really loved your definition at the opening. It was so clear, it was so powerful. And if all of us just knew that, I think we'd be in a lot better situation with the way that we give care and how effective our care can be, right? Because that's another thing I wanted to ask you about is, do you notice that, excuse me, whenever you are working with somebody who you are observing to most likely be in a trauma response, if you follow because you're aware of what that is, do you feel like that they can receive your care better when you've met them where they're at? And just wanted to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Of course. So, definitely. Whenever persons recognize that, okay, you're here for them, you hear them. And it can be, I'm not going to say the smallest thing, but I think understanding that things that are important to others, it may not be what I'm focused on at that moment, but it's important to recognize what's important to my patient. And so if, for example, I need to give medication, for example. And what's important to the patient at that point is I need to speak to my family, or I need to get up and brush my teeth and, do all my AM care. Even though I'm there for one thing, I also recognize that this is what is important to the patient. If I need to teach about something and, the topic goes completely in the direction that patient would prefer it to go, I go with them. I go wherever they are, because by establishing that trust and establishing, the fact that I'm here for you, I'm here to answer your questions, whatever it is that you need me to do for you, to make you feel comfortable, to make you feel heard, and to make you recognize that I'm here for the whole person, not just for what you're in the hospital for to treat. That opens up the door for me to speak to my patients about, what it is that they want, and then what I need to teach. So it's very important to meet persons exactly where they are, and also respect our patients, respect where they are. And I'll use this example where I have patients who, they have a history of substance use, and, or even cigarette smoke. Like they patients who smoke, or patients who have alcohol use disorder. And I realized a long time ago that it's not my time in, or it's not anybody else's time in, but the patient. And just to respect them, wherever they are in their journey. So if it is where this person says, well, when I'm done, I'm going back to smoke, I'm going back to use, or I'm going back to drinking, or whatever it is. It's not for me to scold the person. It's for me to recognize that they're not there yet, right? And so I have to respect wherever they are. I can't get upset, or I can't beat persons. I'm sorry. You can't force persons into submission or try to control their situation. What I have to do is to make sure that I'm there to support them and to help them, in every aspect of their life. So I just want to share that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That is such a powerful, because that non-judgment, right? Like giving somebody their own agency to make those decisions. I believe the effect of that is way more powerful to support them in their shift than giving judgment or scolding somebody, right? So,
and I'll share it this way too. So it doesn't mean that, okay, just go ahead and do whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. But what it shows is I'm hearing you and I understand what is going on. I understand. And so digging a little bit deeper to find out, okay, is there a reason why this is not, while you're not at this places yet, but also again, like in a non-judgmental way. And so one of the things that we have incorporated in the hospital as well is helping to think about the different aspects of a patient. So it's not just you come in to the hospital and you're eating unhealthy, as we're going to talk about at another time, or you're not doing this or you're not doing that. What are the barriers to your care? And so not looking at a patient as one-dimensional, but there are other things surrounding, the reason why they're still in a certain situation. We've had patients before where they do want to stop using, but they continue to relapse because of where they live. They're right in the middle of you know, where the supply chain is happening. The support person that they have, this is the person that's relapsing, and so because they're relapsing, it's causing like a domino effect on that person's health. So it's not just, you know, this person is non-compliant, this person doesn't want to move on from this situation, but there's so many more things that are happening behind the scenes that if we don't probe, we wouldn't know. And so again, like to open that door is to be non-judgmental, because a lot of persons, they're not going to open up if I know that you're going to judge me. Again, like I shared the story of my dad. I don't walk around and telling everyone, because the first thing that somebody's going to say, well, what did he do? He was involved in something. So at that moment, I'm not going to open myself up to hearing your judgment, because you don't know the full story. And so if just using that example, it's important to provide that safe place, right? And that safe zone for persons to recognize that I can share, you know, what's going on in my life, or, you know, what happened to me with this person, because they are trustworthy, and they're going to do their very best to help me. Or if I'm not ready to receive the help as yet, they're not going to turn up their nose, but they'll continue to be a support for when I'm ready to be able to make that decision.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Erin, did you want to follow that up? Or?
Yeah, I had another question also around, and this is perfect lead into that with what you just mentioned about your own personal story. What do you know, I guess I just want to hear your thoughts on when a caregiver, how a caregiver can approach being, you know, like if somebody you're caring for gets the practitioner to a place where they're reacting to their own personal trauma in you know, in the dynamic, in the relationship. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I do, you know, I know that nurses, doctors, frontline workers, they all have their own personal traumas. And if you have a patient come in and their story, you know, can impact that, how do you provide a safe space for yourself whenever, if and when that might happen?
That's a really good question, actually. So for me, it's being of the understanding that I have to take care of myself first, right? And so what that means is, in order for me to effectively care for my patients, I have to be taken care of. And so in the past, when I've had situations that I was unable to, you know, to control, I actually did reach out for counseling, and to help me through that situation. I am a person of faith, so I pray about things, and you know, I incorporate my spirituality, which is, you know, I'm a Christian. So I definitely incorporate prayer and meditation, and, you know, the pulling on my faith-based organizations, you know, to help me through. And so that is extremely important for me to do. So that way, when I encounter my patient, I'm not being, you know, counterintuitive, and I'm able to help them from a place of where I'm already, you know, healed of, you know, of my trauma, and at the place where it's not holding me back. So it's a place where I can now provide comfort and support, where it's not going to, um, make me dysfunctional, if that makes sense. And it's especially important from a provider perspective. Additionally, I think it's, for me, it is really important to be empathetic and sympathetic. There are things that I have not experienced, but it doesn't mean that I can't empathize, because of what I've been through. And I think it's extremely important for me sharing my story with my patients, for them to recognize as well that, hey, I'm human, and I've been through experiences, and I've been, I went through and I overcame. And so it's like a ray of hope for patients a lot. And I'll share another story. So my daughter, Gabrielle, she was born at 25 weeks. So she was the size of my palm. She was 1.5 pounds, and she worked. She pretty much lived in the intensive care for 4 months. And at the moment, I didn't know how I was going to get through it. Again, like it was because of the support of, families, friends, and even the staff. And, through prayer and everything that kept me going. And I recognize that even to this day, that was 5 years ago, and even to this day, I can still share this story with my patients, who may not be going through the same exact thing, but similar things. And even when it's not similar, pain is real, trauma is real. And to show that, I've been at a low place in my life. When I tell you low, it had to be minute by minute, if that makes sense. Sometimes people tell you to take it a day at a time. No, for me it was a minute by minute. Because this minute I can be okay, and then the next minute I'm like, I'm just done. And so that was extremely important, because I recognize that I'm able to help to encourage my patients. I'm able to help to support them, not just as a provider, but also being in the shoe of a patient, being in the shoe of a mom who almost lost her child, being in the shoe of a daughter who lost her dad, in the shoe of a person that, went through sexual assault and, all of the above. So I can understand, and I don't project that on my patients, but I also come from that perspective to say, hey, you know what it felt like, so that way you can connect with the patient and help them, in whatever way they need help.
Wow, Gigi, I think that is just absolutely, it is beautiful to walk in compassion, to extend that compassion, to do so without judgment. On one hand, I would say, it's just common sense. That's just what you're supposed to do. But we know it just doesn't happen like that. And so when individuals come across my path, whom I see, they're doing their job. They're doing it without judgment. They're doing it with compassion. They're treating people the way they would want to be treated. I congratulate you on that, because it's not a small thing. It's very, very easy to put your stuff aside. It's very easy to just walk in and say, I'm just going to do my job and go home. And it's obvious that you care about what you do, and you care about the people that you come into contact with. And everyone doesn't see their job in that manner. So, hats off to you, I say, for doing what you do and for doing it how you do it. I want to ask you, in in your field, in your expertise, and you doing what you do, how do you make sure trauma-informed care is taking place not only from yourself, but those around you, your coworkers, or is that even possible? Is it a situation where, you go in and do your job, you do it to the best of your ability, and you're walking in the care and compassion that you have, and you just have no control of what goes on around you? So is it even possible to make sure that it's happening around you?
Yes. Thank you for that question. Objectively, what I have recognized, and I'll backtrack a little bit. The first time I've actually learned about trauma-informed care and the trauma-informed approach, was actually during my master's degree course. And this is last year, 2023. And trauma has been going on for decades. And, as I said before, I've been a nurse since 2016, so it's almost 8 years. And I haven't necessarily learned about this in curriculum until last year at the master's prepared level. And, and I'm laying this foundation for an important reason. Most of the nurses that are in the acute care setting in the hospital are usually bachelor's prepared. And so I'm going out on a limb and I'm going to say that most of us nurses at the bachelor's degree level may not have been taught about trauma or trauma care, during or schooling. And remember, after school, then you're practicing in the healthcare setting. So now we have nurses who are spending 1 year to even 20 plus years in the field, gaining expertise, but this concept is not necessarily being thrown in the mix. And so I'm saying all of that to say, yes, there are objective things that I can do. And one of the things that I am doing actually is, just as how I'm speaking, about trauma-informed care, it's a topic that I'm learning about. And it's a topic that I'll continue to, delve into and learn more about. And while I'm learning, I'm taking my colleagues with me for us to be able to embark on this journey together and to be able to, to really provide, this care for our patients. And actually, most of us are doing it already. We just don't know that that's what it is.
Right.
And so this is something I spoke to a colleague about, it's things that we're already doing. We may not recognize that that's what it's called, but just to empower us more, do this more. It's not going above and beyond. This is, reaching patients where they are, and this is the care that our patients need to be able to feel like they can trust us in the healthcare system, that they can recognize that when you have other situations going on, we're not just tunnel visioned on taking care of that wound on your leg that you came in for, but we're treating the whole person. And one of the things that I'm doing right now, I'm working with my leadership team to develop an introduction to trauma-informed care, to have these conversations and to be able to, do the first step, which is, create awareness and let persons know that, hey, this is a thing. Trauma-informed care is important, not just in the life of our patients, but in all of our lives as well. And so treating every patient with respect, using the universal precautions to recognize that everyone has gone through some sort of trauma, and to be able to treat person with respect and dignity despite, what is going on, is extremely paramount and very important. And that's the first step. So that this is something I definitely will be embarking on a lot more, because I think it's going to be extremely important for the outcome of our patients and for our outcomes as well.
So I have one more question, and thank you so much for all that you've already shared. But I have one more question, and then I'll turn this over to Aaron for a question or a comment. But I wanted to ask you, can you talk about the difference of trauma-informed care between adults and children? Because we know we cannot handle children the same way we would as adults. And in the work that I do with domestic violence and dealing with sexual assault, I tell everyone all the time, my ministry is not children. I can't handle children. I'm too sensitive in that area. I have, friends who their ministry is children. They deal with sick children. They'll go to children's hospital and go to the intensive care units. I can't do that. If I go to children's hospital, I will sit in the rooms and I will cry. I will hold the babies and I will want everything to be better. And I will write you a check. I will send toys, and because I'm not equipped to deal with children in that area. And we know that adults have trouble dealing with trauma. Adults have issues processing trauma and trying to get through whatever may have happened to them physically or emotionally or mentally, psychologically. So can you talk about the difference in approaching children? And I think I really want to emphasize the care we have to have for children. You cannot expect a child to understand and know and respond the way an adult would. And unfortunately, we have some children who suffered some traumas that adults suffer, and adults can't handle that and can't process it. And so we can't put an expectation on children either. So can you talk about that, the difference of trauma-informed care between adults and children?
Okay, so so in the care setting that I am, I deal with mostly with adults, and so I'm not equipped to speak about children. I can share a couple experiences with you. I remember, as an associate degree nurse, when I went to my clinical setting, which is, learning on the go. So this is my learning experience. And we visited this school, a special school for children who have been abused. And what I realized is it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, and these are 4 and 5 years old, 5-year-olds. And they have to be in a specific classroom. They're not able to be transitioned to the general population with children or in the schooling. And just learning about what happened with them, I would cry every day, honestly, because it's inimaginable. And what I've realized, and again, I know I shared with you about Gabrielle, being in the ICU for how many months. I recognize that it affected her, differently than how it affected me. And I think you brought up something extremely important, which is, children, they experience these things, unfortunately, as well. And it's not just how we're processing what they go through, but how do they process it? This is something, and I'll share this rather quickly. When my daughter, she was in the ICU, she would sleep in the crib. And every time she fell asleep, that's when we would get the opportunity to go home and rest. And what I realized is when she came home, whenever she slept in an open bed or a toddler bed or whatever it is, she was fine. The moment we put her in the crib, she started yelling like crazy. And it took me a while, but I recognized that maybe what she's been through at the hospital, she remembers that she was in the crib. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if it heightened the separation anxiety, but what I could have done in that moment, and I did, I dismantled the crib and I allowed her to stay, in an open bed. So wherever she was comfortable, to not let her relive, that situation. And that's what I thought, was going on with her. But a couple things that I want to share with you is we can teach children, actually, how to be supportive of others who experience trauma. And so to close the loop with what you're saying, we have specialized, children advocates and, persons who can speak directly to address trauma in children. And that's a resource that I can definitely find for you and share with you. But what I wanted to leave us with, though, is the importance of teaching our children empathy and kindness. Mm-hmm. And this can be done using simple, clear languages. We can explain to them that people go through really hard things that make them feel sad or scared. And just being able to, to teach them how to, to be kind and compassionate with things like that. And we can use language that they can understand. And some of those languages, how does it feel when you lose a pet? Or moving from you sitting? Just things that they can identify with. But them, understanding those feelings, then they'll be able to recognize that, oh, that's probably what it feels like, even though it might be deeper.
Right.
But just to teach them how to show empathy and kindness in that sense, how to create a safe and supportive environment, by respecting each other in the classroom, expressing their feelings and listening to each other, and, modeling a behavior of being calm, patient, and supportive, whether they're interacting with, each other or other persons. And the most important thing I'll leave here with you as well is really knowing how to cope and teaching coping strategies, recognizing their emotions and being able to name those emotions. Mm-hmm. So these are just, a lot of, simple ways that patients, or children can start to learn, how to recognize, not necessarily just recognize trauma, but how to respond to persons who have been dealing with trauma in a respectful way.
Thank you so much. I truly have enjoyed this hour. We are just under the hour right now. So, Aaron, I want to give you a moment to have a final comment. And then, Gigi, I will ask that you close us out with your final comments. But I thank you for being with us for this hour. I have many more questions, but, we'll have to do this again. This always happens. But, Aaron, if you would give Luv Bay your final words, and then we'll hear from Gigi.
Yes, Gigi, just thank you for being you, for your work in the world. It gives me so much comfort to know that you are in the healing field, and especially with your life's experiences and just all the light and compassion and love you're bringing to your work. I hope you continue to tend to all of your own personal needs in the ways that, support you most, because, your work is really powerful. I can feel it coming through with your stories. I wanted to just make one comment. I continued trauma-informed care training after I began working with Indigenous communities, and all the list that you had mentioned of the 17 types, and I'm sure they're on there, but the ones I wanted to mention were intergenerational traumas, ancestral traumas, and also, one of the ones that I really loved was that women who have given birth or who have been pregnant, to consider that another experience that could potentially be traumatic. And I think in our culture, we think like, oh, you had a baby, it's such a celebratory thing. Mm-hmm. But to really leave an open dialogue for any woman who's been pregnant, who hasn't been able to get pregnant, or who has given birth, because, we hundreds and thousands of years, we had whole communities supporting this ceremonial process around giving birth. And sometimes going into a hospital can, depending on how it happens, can potentially be very traumatic for a woman. And just to not brush it aside of like, oh, wow, you had a baby and the baby's healthy. And, so there could be so much there. And then, of course, you shared your personal story with that a little bit with us. So just thank you so much for everything that you bring. I'm so honored to be with both of you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, Gigi, I asked, what do you want to leave Luv Bay with tonight on trauma-informed care?
Yeah, Luv Bay, I want to leave with you tonight, that, this is a journey that we're all taking together. And I'm open to learning, how to best support you, my patients, and even myself. So this is a journey that I'm willing to take. I'm very vested, and we'll build together. So thank you again for having me, and I appreciate you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gigi. So Luv Bay, as I said, Gigi will definitely be back with us. I'm hoping that we can even continue this conversation as we move into others. But if you want to catch up on previous episodes from our program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. We thank you so much for joining Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia here on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Luv Bay, we want you to remember that we're rising out of the ashes together. Good evening.